It's been an entire year since news broke about Morphe shutting down their stores and filing for bankruptcy. The news seemed to come out of nowhere, and even their own employees were left knowing nothing. Stores were marked down up to 90% off, and one by one, they shut down, leaving thousands of employees without jobs with next to no notice.
Our store is closing as of tomorrow. We've had 1 day of notice.
We now know Morphe wants to take their brand in a different direction by leaving influencers and focusing more on building up their own products. But this hasn't really been happening. Morphe has still been working with influencers. They've just switched the type of influencer they work with. In fact, prior to their bankruptcy, it seems like they were trying their hardest to tap into a new audience, and Michaela actually has something to do with it. It's a mess, so let's get into it. When news of the bankruptcy broke, a lot of people were shocked because only a few short years ago, Morphe was everything. Every influencer had a code, every beauty guru had a collab, their products were staples in a lot of people's collection, and it was all thanks to the business model they had. Influencers were the backbone of their company, and it's kind of ironic that the thing that made them also ruined them. I feel like Morphe was one of the first companies to realize the commercial power that influencers had, and they took a chance on, well, pretty much all of them. Since Morphe created such a good relationship with these influencers, and by relationship, I mean they were paying them good, influencers shilled Morphe more than any brand out there, and that's what made them into this billion-dollar brand that they once were. Unfortunately for them, that was also their downfall. When their main players started to get into drama and go through all these cancellations, it put them into a really bad position. Customers were demanding that they drop the problematic influencers, but those problematic influencers were the reason that they were so successful. It was a bad position to be in, and that was what started the downfall of Morphe. But luckily for Morphe, this was around a time where a new platform was on the rise. TikTok was a whole new world, and just like they did years ago with YouTube creators, they got in quick with a new generation of TikTokers. They decided to branch off with a new brand called Morphe 2. They hired Charli D'Amelio and Dixie D'Amelio to be the face of the brand, which was supposed to be a more light, clean girl makeup for a younger generation. In theory, this could have been a great idea. This is when Charli and Dixie were both at the height of their careers, and I think Morphe had really high hopes for this new line and the new generation of influencers to be their next ticket to success. How's that working out for them? Well, I mean, I don't really hear much about it anymore, and it never really seemed to take off in the first place. I think they assumed that since Charli and Dixie were the top creators on TikTok, those kinds of numbers would automatically transfer over into sales for them, but what they failed to realize was Charli's audience during this time seemed to be more interested in slime. Obviously, this plan wasn't saving Morphe because they still ended up filing for bankruptcy last year, and they said they were going to be shifting their focus going forward. They no longer wanted to be known as the influencer brand they once were. They wanted to stand on their own and have their products speak for themselves without needing influencers to be successful. To me, that made sense. They kind of fell off because the influencers that made them were getting canceled, so I'm sure they wanted to avoid that happening again. I expected them to do a whole rebrand and come out with some really strong standalone products, but that's not what happened. Despite claiming that they wanted to move away from influencers, they ran right back to influencers, just a different kind of influencer. They decided to team up with one of the top beauty creators on TikTok, Meredith Duxbury, and they came out with an entire collection with her. Doesn't exactly seem like focusing on building their brand on their own, now does it? But nonetheless, a lot of fans were really happy for Meredith. She had her picture on a billboard in New York City, and she was really grateful for the collab. Clearly, Morphe didn't actually want to stray away from influencers. They just wanted to follow the money and tap into a new audience that made sense. The beauty community on TikTok was growing so fast, and they knew this was their next big break. Well, it turns out Meredith may not have been Morphe's first choice. Michaela actually revealed in a TikTok the other day that Morphe reached out to her years ago and offered her 6 figures to do a collab with them. She posted a video talking about products or brands that she forgot about or fell off, and included in that list was Morphe, and that's when she revealed everything.
This is a full face of makeup I completely forgot about. This isn't a product, it's an entire brand. Morphe? The downfall of Morphe is the craziest shit to me. I don't use Morphe products like ever. I'm gonna use this 35C Everyday Chic palette. I do still have like every single Morphe palette because it's nostalgic. I'm gonna put a little bit of eye base. You wanna hear some tea? In my first year doing this as a career, so 3-4 years ago, I was in talks with Morphe about doing Morphe X Michaela. And this was like a huge deal. Like, big 6-figure offer. Like, I would be in Morphe stores across the world. My face on billboards in New York City was the biggest offer I had seen so far in my career at that point. Anyways, I said no. Because I knew in my head and in my heart that was not the path for me. I had a gut feeling not to do it. It's crazy to think about because now no one gives a shit about Morphe. The amount of tea I have about my career, I could write a novel. I do kind of wonder how and if my life would be different if I did the Morphe collab. And that is not the only collab I've turned down, by the way. There's many.
Clearly, Morphe was trying to save their brand and break into the TikTok audience years ago. I know they did collab with a few TikTokers around 2021, but getting Michaela definitely would have been huge for them. Maybe Michaela and the other creators saw the reputation that some of the original creators were getting from being associated with Morphe, and maybe that was enough to deter them from the brand. Now, Morphe actually commented on Michaela's video saying that no one gives a shit about them and exposing how much they wanted to give her for a collab, and they responded and said, starting the video and then a smiley face, watching the video, shocked face. Regardless, that palette holds up. You looked stunning. You guys know I'm not a Morphe fan, but I also feel like Michaela didn't have the best intentions behind revealing her turning down this collab and saying how much money they offered her. Michaela has been accused of essentially selling out, taking sponsorships from brands or products that she doesn't even like, not disclosing anything properly, and lying about results. I think this was her way of trying to make herself seem more trustworthy, showing that she turned down such a big offer from a big company that's worked with pretty much every influencer under the sun. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but her timing also feels a bit ironic. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with her. I also think Morphe had a huge falling off. They aren't talked about as much, other brands have surpassed them, that's all true. But one of her really good friends, Meredith, recently came out with a whole collection with Morphe. Meredith has been so excited over this collection too. She posted herself in front of her billboard in New York City, and it's just kind of strange how Michaela had to bring up the fact that a New York City billboard was also offered to her as well. I'm not disagreeing with Michaela on their downfall. But if I was a beauty creator who had a beauty creator friend who just came out with a whole collection with said brand, I would probably hold off on doing a video saying no one gives a shit about them anymore. It kind of just seems like poor timing, and if I was Meredith, I would be taking her statement and the timing of it to be a little bit shady. If Michaela had just reviewed Meredith's collection and didn't like something and was actually being honest, then that would be different. That would be constructive, but the timing of this just fell off to me. But Michaela isn't the only influencer who's had a change of heart about Morphe lately. Jaclyn Hill actually commented on Michaela's video and said, "The downfall of Morphe is literally the craziest thing ever. Don't even get me started. Breaks my heart." Which is interesting considering the fact that Morphe has run and owned her brand for the last 5 years. What I did find surprising was TikTok seems to have a completely different outlook on Morphe compared to the people who were around during the height of their brand. There were so many comments under Michaela's video telling her that they still love and use Morphe every day. But putting all of that aside, it just goes to show Morphe has been trying to shift their audience for years now. Although Morphe 2 didn't work out as I'm sure they hoped for it to work out, getting involved with the actual beauty creators on TikTok seems to be where the money's at. I never thought for a second their plan of focusing on Morphe products and taking a break from influencers would ever work out, and I think Morphe knows that as well. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about everything down below, and I'll see you next time.